Hi, Brian Borgen here for Reelwind. Hey, the movie Taylor and I are reviewing is The Invisible Man. It's the newer version of the Invisible Man. It's a remake of the 1933 monster movie, and this movie really delivers a tense and cruel blend of both horror and sci-fi. I found it to be maybe a little more believable part of sci-fi. It's very well acted. The lead actress, Elizabeth Moss, is Cecilia. And I was real curious coming into this as to how they would make the character invisible, without it being too out there, too outlandish, and like a superpower or changing from a human form, something like that. And it's a very sophisticated sci-fi horror combination that really keeps you on the edge of your seat with the toxic relationship of Cecilia and her husband Adrian, who is he's one of the top optic experts in the world. And there seems to be a constant psychological dread that, combined with the physical pain and the really horrific actions, is pushed to an excruciating level, and almost to a level of anxiety. And throughout the movie, with all this happening to Celia, we believe her throughout, when others, understandably, kind of question her sanity. And you really feel for her. And the movie starts out after a very taut opening, kind of reminiscent of Sleeping with the Enemy, with Cecilia escaping her abusive marriage. And there begins events that allow the previously agoraphobic Cecilia to finally claim her freedom back when she escapes, and then she's able to begin to help others, some family members and friends, when she's awarded a pretty healthy inheritance from her husband's surprise suicide. And as Cecilia learns more, she starts to put pieces of the puzzle together and realizes her husband has found a way to torment her further. And it's a reality she can't prove to anyone. And without seeing what's going on, like we can see, it's understandable that what is happening is pretty unbelievable. And I think it builds up some of that frustration a bit too. And so through her grit and perseverance, she gradually finds a way to expose her husband Adrian and his very sophisticated invention, and finds a way to power through it and reclaim her life back. And it's one of those movies that it's a combination. It is. I wouldn't recommend it for kids. It's that mix of sci-fi and it's pretty horrific scenes in there. But it's really interesting at the same time, because it is on the sophisticated side and very well acted, all that. So given this movie, I definitely would see it. I give it about a 4 out of 5 stars. Some it may not agree. It's kind of being that it's a remake, but I think it's a very interesting way to do it. And again, the sci-fi part of it is like, I can maybe see that happening. So I definitely recommend watching it. And again, it's available on Netflix. And for Reelwind, this is Brian Borgen and Overture West Ashley.
And welcome back to The Reelwind. My name is Taylor Lee, and I am the lifestyle coordinator at Overture Buckhead South. Excuse me while I scoot over a little bit. I thought my dog was going to join me, but he decided not to, and I want to make sure that I'm in the best lighting so you guys can see me. Maybe that's better, maybe that's not. Okay. So let's get into the movie, I guess. So this week, and in case you're wondering why I'm dressed like this and why I have a different background, it's the weekend. And so I'm recording this at my house, or technically at my dad's house, because it's Father's Day weekend. So I watched The Invisible Man. It is an R-rated film, just released 2020, and it's about like 2 hours and maybe 5 minutes long. Um, I literally just got done watching it. It's a horror thriller, so it's a little different from what I guess we have been reviewing. And yeah, honestly, this might be one of the shortest reviews that I do. Um, I'll start where I normally start, and that is about with the characters. Again, I have my notebook, so I can fill you all in. So let's talk about the Invisible Man. Okay, so we got Cecilia, who goes by C. Cass. She is the main person in the film. She plays her role extremely well. Um, she's definitely she definitely portrays somebody that is scared and anxious and a little cautious, and that's due to the relationship or the abusive relationship that she was in and escaped from ultimately. She we see that she's kind and a very loving friend, and the vibe that you really get off of her the whole time is like this on edge vibe. But again, a lot of that comes with her character's background in the movie itself. So, I mean, it's understandable. Um, then we have Adrian Griffin, who is her ex. I'm not sure exactly like what their relationship status was cemented as. Like, I don't think they were married, but they had been together for like 2 years. She had talked about how he wanted a family with her, but she didn't want that because she knew like the child would ultimately tie her to him and she could never escape. But even though he's like a really hard hitting character, that's the kind of driving force behind C's character. We don't really see him a lot, but that is because he is the Invisible Man. But what we gather from him as his character and from the way other characters speak about him is that he's very smart, but also extremely controlling and abusive and manipulative, extremely rich and wealthy due to his intelligence. But let's be honest, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how smart and intelligent you are if you're a controlling, abusive, and manipulative person. I mean, nobody's going to want to be with you or be around you. Then the next character is James Lehner, I think that's his last name. But James is personally one of my favorite characters. He is a San Francisco police detective. He is also C's childhood friend. He's a nice guy, and he ultimately is the one that gives C a place to stay when she kind of has escaped her previous relationship / life. And he does have a daughter, Sydney, who is the next character that I'm going to kind of briefly talk about. So Sydney is obviously James's daughter, his teenage daughter. She's very, very pretty. That doesn't really have anything to do with her character personality, but I just thought I'd share my thoughts. She is the youngest person that we see in the film itself. Again, unlike the last movie that I did a review on, there's not like a bazillion main characters. There's only a very minute few, and it more tries to center on C and her relationship with them. But anyways, so yeah, Sydney is very silly and she's very caring, and she is about to go off to college. So she's kind of got that little dreamer of the future kind of spark in her, as well as like this is a matter of fact what I want. I'm very future goal oriented. Let's do it. Another character that is just mainly like a supporting character is Emily Cass, who is C's sister. I'm not sure if she's older or younger, but she is very different in comparison to her sister. She's also very caring, but a difference in character is that she's very strong, kind of takes no BS, really puts off this air about her that's like, you better back off, like a very intimidating personality. In the film, C even spoke with her to kind of like tell her how she admires that part of her, saying like, you're kind of like a cop. You have this demeanor of a cop. You're very brave and outspoken and very strong, whereas James is a cop and 6 feet, and he is more intimidated with things than you are. Like, how can I be like you? So we know that she kind of like looks up to her sister, especially because her sister's kind of always been there for her to protect her and kind of the way that she says, like, save her from her life. In a lot of ways, she is the one that comes to get C in the middle of the night, or I guess really early in the morning, to kind of help her escape from Adrian in the beginning of the film. Moving on to another character, Tom Griffin, who is Adrian Griffin's brother. He is not only Adrian's brother, but he's also his lawyer. He comes off very cold and slightly arrogant, very Pawn-esque. Like, he's kind of always kind of been manipulated by his brother, Adrian, and kind of gets the blame for some things probably throughout their childhood and ultimately in their adulthood, as you will come to find later in the film. Ultimately, I didn't like Adrian. I didn't like Tom really either. I feel like with a lot of the characters, there wasn't enough development of character, or I don't know. The characters didn't seem to intertwine and interact like they have in the past films that Brian and I have covered. So that was kind of different, but at the same time, it is a 2020 horror thriller, so I don't think the whole point of the film was to have an interconnected story plot. It was more of like to be a thriller, just like, oh, what can we do to make this exciting, and focus all on that. And I mean, that's fine, don't get me wrong, but I personally enjoy a little more character development and understanding of characters in their past a little more. But that's just me, I guess. There were a few other characters that were listed, but honestly, they were very small potatoes, and the parts that they played, I couldn't even tell you who they were because unmemorable, I guess. So now that we've kind of broken down the characters and kind of talked about their role and the ultimate rating of this film, I'll move on to the film in its more entirety and cinematic aspects. The start of the film was really good because it definitely set the tone and vibe of what this movie was really all about. It had a very sorry, my dog is snoring. He had a I'll just show you what I'm looking at. Sorry, hold on. I don't know if you can see that or not. Sorry. Anyways, so the film started off with a very heavy feeling, and a lot of that was not only portrayed by the actors themselves, but also with other small details like the fact that it was raining and dark, and just kind of it really, in the music too, really helped provide the scene with that very heavy atmosphere that they were going for to kind of like set the tone of the rest of the movie. Um, just like I said, with the music helping set the tone, generally throughout, it becomes something that we don't really think about. But the overall music that goes along with each scene in a movie really helps set the tone for each scene and helps kind of portray the feeling that they're trying to get across to ultimately us, the viewers, and kind of give us insight to how that character feels or how the characters are feeling. So the music pairs very well with the scenes in helping that aspect along. It added the feelings that they were trying to get across to us throughout the film and within that moment. So that was really good. Another thing that is kind of hard to do is like the movie is called The Invisible Man. So one of your main characters isn't a big visual aspect. It's more of an implied presence, or an implied feeling of that presence. And I think that's another thing that the movie did portray extremely well, with, again, the camera movements and the music and the actors' reactions and ultimately acting skills, to help us kind of sense that vibe of like being watched. You almost get pulled into like this overwhelmed, not fear, but like sense of chaos in a way, just like C was probably feeling, you know, because in the overall build up of the movie, in the description, is that she is in this abusive relationship, with Adrian. She does escape, but then he ends up dying, and she ultimately is given, she like inherits or is willed all of, I'm guessing all, at least most of it was a large sum of money, all of his money, and wealth. And so that also kind of is tying her to her abuser. But at the same time, like, I'd be a little skeptical too if I had literally just gotten out of like escaped an abusive relationship and all of a sudden they like show up dead and I'm given the money. I'd be thinking like, something's not right, especially when the person telling me all this is literally this guy's brother. Like something just wouldn't add up right to me, but whatever. So you do kind of get that paranoid feeling of being watched from the film, which is really good considering that the majority of the time Adrian is being portrayed not visually, but more emotionally as being present. So they did an extremely good job of that. And they do kind of have you wondering what it's going to lead up to in the end. Like, is he really invisible? Like, did he really die? Is she just experiencing trauma from this abusive relationship? Like, not going to spoil anything with that. So another thing that I really liked is that they did have when the activity kind of started up, of him showing, see that he was still around, or that he was still there. The it started very abruptly after she was told of his passing or his death. So I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But even though some of the activity from the start was a little abrupt and obvious, they did add in they still provided like those little subtle nuances of activity that you kind of have to pay attention to that weren't so like in your face obvious it was going on. There were a lot of those like tight feeling in your chest that really helped play up the character's emotion, which I keep bringing up. But I mean, I think that's one of the most important things of a film is to express the feelings of the characters to the audience. It really helps you stay more connected with the characters. I don't really have too much to say about this film, to be completely honest. I mean, it wasn't a bad film, but it wasn't just like a whoa, like, over the top good one. It was middle ground, Yeah. I also feel like they should have added almost like sci-fi to the title. I don't know. I don't really have any much more to say about that. Yeah, so I guess this is the end of my review. Ultimately, I would give this movie probably like a solid 3 out of like 5 invisible men. Yeah, I mean, just because I found it meh doesn't mean that you won't enjoy it or that you will enjoy it. That's ultimately up for you to decide. That's kind of like why we do this stuff. So we would love if you would go and watch the movie and maybe leave us a little comment about what you thought or what your opinion of it was. Yeah, and even feel free to leave us a comment below in the comment section asking us maybe there's a movie that you want us to review specifically. Like, we're always up to suggestions. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this movie is not on Netflix yet. I don't know if it will be, but usually the ones that we review are on Netflix. This one is actually offered in Redbox. So we were trying to do a little something different there too. Anyways, so yeah, that's the end of my review. It would really help us if you like this movie, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you would like to see content like this or this specifically. Again, leave a comment below. We are always reading what you guys leave us. And happy Saturday and happy watching. Bye.